Welcome, Dreamwalkers, to a world that was always hidden just beneath the one you knew. Tonight, we return to Hogwarts, not the one from your textbooks or the silver screen, but something older, stranger, and more in motion. Because in this world, beneath the shifting staircases and behind the mirror corridor, lies something few have ever seen, a court of motion. An enchanted court, pulsing with forgotten magic, where rhythm, movement, and intent shape not just spells, but legacy. Here, basketball is ancient magic. Here, Michael Jordan is not just a sports icon, he is a silent mentor who appears in dreams, gliding through candlelit courts in complete silence, teaching not with words, but with motion. You've probably heard the meme, the one that lives in every internet corner like a room of requirement. Harry Potter is set between 1991 and 1998. But not once did a character say, "Man, the Chicago Bulls are having a hell of a run." And honestly? That's the real plot hole. Because how could you be alive in that golden age of basketball and not feel air brushing past your robes? So here, in our story, we fix that. We bend the worlds together. We let Jordan's rhythm leak into Harry's dreams. We let triangle offense meet triangle magic. And we find out what happens when legacy passes, not by words, but by pass, pivot, and pause. Each part of this story has unfolded slowly, dreamlike, over years of school and seasons of change. And tonight, we're reaching the quiet moment just after motion, the exhale of rhythm, the breath before a return. Now, I know many of you are listening to this as you fall asleep. Maybe the lights are low, your blankets are pulled just right, and you're barely holding on to consciousness. That's okay. Let the rhythm carry you. But before you drift too far, do me a favor. Tap that like button, soft as a pass. Leave a comment with the exact time you're watching. I love seeing when our little dream team gathers. And if you missed parts 1 or 2, or any of the earlier Hogwarts Times Bulls episodes, there's a full playlist waiting right here on the channel. Each episode flows into the next, designed for overnight listening and long-form dreams. You're not late. You're right on rhythm. So take a slow breath. Close your eyes if they're not closed already. And when you're ready, we'll begin. The court is warm again. The ball is in your hands. And tonight, we return to where rhythm never truly leaves. Soft rain stitched the windows of the Hogwarts Express, each drop a tiny drumbeat lost in fog. The sky beyond the glass was a deep pewter grey, the kind that held its breath before thunder. Inside the compartment, Harry Potter sat very still, his forehead resting lightly against the cool pane, eyes following the blurred rise and fall of the hills as the train curved through the northern countryside. There was a strange stillness to his chest. An absence that had nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the small, enchanted basketball that lay cold and silent in the folds of his trunk. It hadn't pulsed once. Not since summer began. Not a hum. Not a shimmer of light. The old warmth that had once resonated through his fingers, that rhythmic pull in dreams, the cadence of bounce, breath, leap, was gone. Michael Jordan hadn't appeared in his sleep for months. No silent gestures, no fast break glides through the dream court, no knowing nods beneath ghostly spotlights. Just a quiet, echoing void. And though he hadn't told Ron or Hermione, the silence scared him more than Sirius Black's escape. They'd read about it, of course. The headline etched in the moving ink of the Daily Prophet, Sirius Black escapes Azkaban. And beneath the grainy photo of his haunted, wild-eyed face, there was panic. Whispers in every hallway, shadows behind every castle stone. But Harry's fear was different. Less urgent, more aching. It was the slow erosion of movement, the way his wand now felt half a second behind him, his spells stuttering in the air like bad passes. Even walking through platform 9 3/4, he'd felt his steps lag. A beat behind the crowd. Now, as the train rolled into the thickening mist of the highlands, he closed his eyes and listened. The rhythm wasn't there. Not in the track beneath them, not in the usual thrum of excitement in his chest. It was like hearing music played underwater, muffled, distant, unreachable. The court of motion, once a flickering secret below the castle, had vanished from his dreams entirely. He had discovered it in first year, not on purpose, but by the instinct of someone who had always felt his limbs knew more than his thoughts. Hidden behind the mirror corridor near the divination tower, the door was only visible when he moved with intention. One night, chasing a dream, he had turned a corner too sharply, pivoted in just the right way, and it had appeared. The court had been alive. Not with players or crowds, but with potential. Smooth, enchanted floorboards that shifted like breath. Painted arcs that glowed when touched. It responded to rhythm, to footwork, to the softest pulse of motion. At its center, an arcane circle resembling both a center court and a runic spellwork. Here, magic and movement intertwined, defense as intuition, offense as expression. It was a place of learning, but not in the way classrooms taught. It asked nothing except presence. But this year, the castle felt different. As he stepped off the train under the bruised dusk of September, a gust of cold wind met him, sharper than usual. The sky split with silent lightning as they loaded into carriages. Even the thestrals moved slower, quieter, as though something were watching. In the great hall, the sorting hat's voice was thinner, drifting rather than pronouncing. Candles flickered with hesitant flames. When Harry took his seat beside Ron, the air felt off-tempo. It was small things, the awkward start to the first-year applause, the way plates filled unevenly, the echo of the hall coming a heartbeat too late. Dumbledore's welcome speech was kind as always, but his eyes were heavy. And when he mentioned the Dementors stationed at the school's perimeter, Harry's stomach sank. The word brought not just a chill, but something deeper. The sense that defense, true defense, not just magical, was going to become much harder. That night, as students slipped into sleep, Harry sat awake in the Gryffindor common room, the enchanted ball on the table in front of him. He had hoped, maybe here, maybe now, it would glow. Just a pulse. Just once. But nothing. He touched it lightly, fingers tracing its smooth curve. Once, it had shimmered gold when Jordan appeared. Once, it had spun slowly when Harry made a perfect cut across the court in his dreams. But now it sat inert, as if emptied of its reason. When he finally climbed into bed and pulled the covers over his head, the ceiling above him faded into darkness. He waited for the familiar pull, dreams where sneakers squeaked on enchanted wood, where breath synced with movement, where the court expanded like a lung. But all he found was quiet. An endless stretch of shadow. No court. No Jordan. Just a long, slow, breathless night. There were moments, in the weeks that followed, where Harry felt like a ghost moving through his own story. The familiar walls of Hogwarts still wrapped around him like a half-remembered lullaby, but the corridors had changed their tempo. Nothing was wrong, exactly, but everything was out of formation. The stairs hesitated before shifting. Classroom doors opened a beat too late. Even his own limbs felt mistimed, as though someone had rewritten the choreography of his body without telling him. And at night, the silence in his dreams no longer felt empty, it felt off balance. He wasn't sleeping well. Not restlessly, just shallowly. Like drifting in and out of static. He would wake with that feeling of unfinished motion, as if he'd been about to leap and never landed. Sometimes he'd open his eyes and stare at the ceiling for long stretches, aware of his own stillness in a way that made his heart beat oddly. The enchanted basketball remained cold in his trunk, tucked behind spellbooks and robes, as inert as a stone. He stopped touching it altogether. Touching it made the absence louder. Ron noticed first. Or maybe he always noticed, but didn't know what to say. He'd fidget beside Harry at breakfast, eyes flicking to the dark circles growing under his friend's eyes. Hermione asked directly. "You're not sleeping, are you?" she whispered one morning, as they packed up parchment in defense against the dark arts. Harry shrugged, the lie already fading. "It's like playing blindfolded," he admitted finally. "There's no court." Hermione looked at him with her eyebrows drawn in, not confused, just searching. She was one of the few who had ever glimpsed the court of motion in a half-dream once when she fell asleep studying with Harry near the mirror corridor. She had called it a resonance field, with that scholarly gleam in her eyes. But Harry knew better. It wasn't theory. It was feel. And now that feeling was gone. But then there was Professor Lupin. Remus Lupin didn't move like the other teachers. His footsteps were always purposeful, quiet, but with a kind of natural timing that reminded Harry of something old. Not flashy. Not strong. But structured. Balanced. When he taught, it wasn't with force or flourish. He taught like a system. A subtle one. The way he corrected Harry's wand grip was not unlike the way Jordan once adjusted his pivot foot in a dream, wordlessly, by placing pressure through motion. One evening in October, as dusk settled in like a yawn over the castle, Lupin invited Harry to stay after class. "You're clenching," he said simply. "Your spell work is fighting your body." Harry blinked. No one else had said it so plainly. Lupin gestured gently. "Try again. But breathe first. Let the movement begin before the magic does." So Harry raised his wand again, and for the first time in weeks, felt a whisper of something click. Not a full rhythm. Not yet. But a hint. Like the sound of a bounce in the distance. That night, Harry dreamed for the first time in many nights. It wasn't the full court. It wasn't even color. Just fragments. The soft sound of feet scuffing against a hardwood floor. A half-formed triangle drawn in chalk. 3 figures moving in slow orbit, 1 leading, 2 reacting. The center figure paused. Pivoted. And passed into shadow. The triangle dissolved. Harry woke gasping, not from fear, but from the sudden awareness of loss. He sat up in bed, heart pounding with something unnameable. It was October now, deep into the season that wasn't happening. Somewhere far away in the Muggle world, newspapers reported that Michael Jordan had retired from basketball. Officially. The greatest player in the world had walked off the court. No warning. No last dance. Just silence. In the wizarding world, no one understood. But Harry did. The dreams continued, but they were broken, fragments like cracked glass. He saw flashes of the Bulls, not in crisp uniformity, but in chaos. Players drifting from their spots. Cuts made too early. Screens missed entirely. He didn't know all their names, but he knew enough to feel the absence. They were trying to run something without a center. Like trying to breathe without lungs. And somewhere in those dreams, Harry began to sense that Jordan was still there, but watching. Not moving. Sitting in the shadowed wings of the court, elbows on knees, head bowed. It wasn't sadness. It was withdrawal. As if the rhythm had been poured out of him and left to evaporate in the rafters. Lupin's lessons took on a new tone. He didn't say much, but he started to demonstrate more. Standing beside Harry, mirroring his stances, his timing. They began to move together. Nothing dramatic, simple sequences. Blocks. Parries. Breath work. Lupin taught him how to anticipate not with sight, but with feel. Everything has a beat, he said once, softly, while they practiced disarming spells in the fading light of the defense classroom. Even silence. Harry began to listen more closely. To Lupin. To footsteps in corridors. To the wind in the trees outside the common room window. Nothing was fixed yet. But something was shifting. Not the return of rhythm, but the memory of it. One night, as he passed the mirror corridor alone, the door to the court of motion flickered into near existence. Just a shimmer. Just for a breath. And then it was gone. The first time Harry truly understood what it meant to be out of rhythm was not in a classroom, nor on a broomstick, nor even in one of his fading dreams. It happened during the first Quidditch match of the season, a game that had once been second nature, reflex and instinct, flow and flight, and now felt like pushing through water that no longer parted for him. The Dementors arrived on the pitch long before he saw them. They didn't need to move. They didn't need to speak. Their presence leaked into the air like cold ink, staining everything it touched. The sky was a flat iron sheet. The wind had stopped. And as Harry rose into the air, the firebolt slicing toward the cloud line, he could feel the weight settling into his muscles, not fear, not exactly, but something else. Positional dissonance. A defense that wasn't made of bodies or brooms, but of emptiness. The Seeker's job was to find the snitch, follow movement, trace patterns in chaos, anticipate the invisible. But today, the air felt blind. The game unfolded in broken gestures. Chasers missed cues. Beaters drifted out of formation. Harry tried to cut left, but no one was there to receive. He swept into a dive, but the world didn't follow. The rhythm wasn't just gone. It was being drained. And then they came. He saw them, black robes billowing like torn sails, faces cloaked in darkness, floating like anchors above the pitch. They weren't chasing him. They didn't need to. Their mere presence erased spacing. Erased heat. Erased momentum. As if the very idea of connection between teammates had been peeled away. The broom dipped, and Harry's vision shimmered. And then, he fell. He didn't remember the moment he hit the ground. He didn't remember the impact. Just the cold. Not outside, but inside. Like something sacred had been leached from him and swallowed into shadow. Madame Pomfrey's wing was warm. There were blankets and chocolate and low murmurs. But Harry didn't hear them. He was watching the inside of his eyelids, where a different scene played out. Jordan, standing just past half-court, clutching the ball tightly in both hands. The arena was half-lit, stands yawning empty, banners silent. A single shadow pressed toward him, slowly, steadily. Not a player. Not a defender. Just pressure. Harry had never seen him like this before. Jordan was always motion incarnate, even at rest. Always poised, as if every inch of his body contained a map of the court. But here, he faltered. A hesitation dribble. A step back. A pivot. And the ball rolled out of his hands. Harry gasped awake. The ball hadn't been stolen. There was no foul. No hand swatting, no crowd jeering. It simply slipped. As if his fingers forgot how to hold it. As if the rhythm had drained from them, molecule by molecule. Harry sat up in bed, palms sweaty. The vision haunted him, not because of what had happened, but because of what it meant. For the first time since the dreams began, Jordan had lost the beat. He didn't tell Ron. He didn't tell Hermione. Not this time. Instead, he wandered the halls at night, sometimes until his feet ached. He moved in long arcs, drifting through empty spaces, listening to the castle breathe. Once, he saw a Dementor gliding beyond the windows of the astronomy tower, its form limned in frost. He didn't draw his wand. He didn't run. He simply stood and watched, feeling how the very air around it seemed to collapse. Not from cold, but from absence. He began to realize something, slowly and painfully. Dementors weren't just fear-made flesh. They were defense perfected. Not by anticipation, or agility, or tactics, but by erasure. They didn't block paths. They unmade them. Their defense didn't require understanding your next move. It just made sure there was no next move to make. At night, Harry's spells stuttered even in dreams. He tried to reach for a broom in a vision once, and it vanished. He tried to call out a formation, but his voice was soundless. Even in the court of motion, when it did briefly appear, it was empty. Not abandoned. Wiped. Jordan no longer moved there. Only echoes remained. Ghostly outlines of screens once set, of arcs once traced, now faded like chalk in rain. In the real world, Lupin noticed. He didn't ask questions, not directly. But their lesson shifted again. Less focus on wand work, more on presence. "Stand your ground," he murmured one afternoon, as they practiced counter-curses. "Even when the court falls away." Harry nodded. It wasn't instruction. It was a vow. And that night, for just a moment in his sleep, he found himself standing on the edge of the darkened court again. No Jordan. No ball. Just silence. But this time, he did not wait to see what appeared. He took one slow step forward. And the floor, for a single instant, lit beneath his foot. It was a slow Sunday morning when the map first whispered to him. The Gryffindor common room was still half asleep, the windows gauzy with light rain and soft condensation. Ron snored with his face planted in a pillow, parchment creased beneath his cheek. Hermione had already gone, no doubt tucked away in the library like a bookmark inside some massive volume. Harry sat alone on the couch, knees drawn up, watching the fire crackle as though its rhythm might speak to him. The Marauder's map lay open across his lap, the enchanted ink shifting gently beneath his fingers. He hadn't intended to use it, not really. He had been flipping through old things, searching for some lost note or scrap of spell work, and there it was, folded like a secret. "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." The moment the ink had bloomed across the parchment, something felt different. It wasn't the names, though they moved, clustered, meandered as always. It was the pattern of it. The presence. The way people moved in relation to one another. Not randomly, but in threads. Corridors like passing lanes. Staircases timed like screens. Students cutting across each other's paths, tracing invisible plays through the school. It was no longer just a map. It was a live diagram of formation. Of rhythm. He stared at it for a long time, longer than he meant to. Names slid across the corridors: Seamus Finnegan, Neville Longbottom, Professor McGonagall. Each in motion, each leaving faint trails that pulsed just slightly before fading. He watched how students adjusted when Peeves appeared, like defenders scrambling against a full-court press. He followed how professors walked, measured, spaced, authoritative. And suddenly, it wasn't a castle anymore. It was a court. A living, breathing court of motion. Harry leaned forward, breath catching. Something in his chest lifted, not quite warmth, but a flicker of recognition. Not memory. Not yet. Just awareness. Presence. The sense that even in silence, things were moving. That movement, even unconscious, formed rhythm. He began watching the map nightly. Not for secrets. Not for danger. Just to see the dance. He traced the footfalls of Hermione pacing between the library and common room. Ron's slow jog to meals. The strange, spiraling patterns of Luna Lovegood, who wandered as if following her own beat entirely. he noticed how Filch patrolled in looping circuit. T in himself, but around him. Lupin noticed the change. During their sessions, Harry began moving before instructions were given. Responding to the pressure of air, to the angle of Lupin's shoulder. He didn't think. He flowed. "That's it," Lupin murmured once, after Harry sidestepped a non-verbal hex with eerie precision. "You're feeling the floor again." And he was. The court of motion remained hidden. But something had stirred beneath it. He wandered the castle with new purpose. Not always physically, but mentally, tracing the patterns of others, learning the spaces where people clustered, paused, reversed. He began to predict things. Where Peeves would show up. When Filch would double back. Even when Hermione would look up from her book, as if sensing his gaze through stone. He wasn't fast again. Not yet. But he was present. And that night, the dream came differently. He stood at midcourt, not the faded, echoing one of recent dreams, but the original. The glowing hardwood. The sigils humming faintly at the perimeter. He was alone, but the court breathed. Its lines pulsed gently, like a heart sinking with breath. No Jordan. No crowd. But when he stepped forward, the lines lit beneath his feet. He looked down, and realized the formations were shifting to match his motion. Like the Marauder's map. But more alive. Less ink. More intuition. He took a step back. The lines adjusted. He spun gently, slowly, like a dancer warming into the first bar of a long song. The lines followed, echoing his movements, forecasting them, reacting to them. The court wasn't asking him to play. It was asking him to feel. He did. When he woke, there were no words. Just a strange warmth in his fingers. He went to his trunk and pulled out the enchanted basketball. Still cold. Still unlit. But not heavy. He tucked it under his arm, rose quietly, and walked into the morning light. The castle was beginning to wake. Footsteps echoed on stone. The map in his pocket pulsed once. Just faintly. And Harry smiled. There was something strange in the way Sirius Black appeared on the map. Not his name, there were dozens of those. Sirius Black was just one more signature among 1,000 scrawled across the living parchment. No, what was strange was how he moved. He didn't follow patterns. He didn't hold formations. Where other names curved with the school shape, flowing through corridors and clustering in stairwells, Sirius Black flickered, offbeat, off-grid, often stepping into places no one else seemed to touch. One night, Harry saw the name hovering near the Whomping Willow, then gone. Another time, it darted behind the tapestry near the owlery, only to vanish before the ink could settle. It was like watching a player refusing to join the team. Not opposing. Not defending. Just refusing. And Harry began to feel it in the walls. A presence. Not angry. Not hostile. But restless. Like a breath held too long. The court of motion had not reappeared, not fully. But its echo lingered. Every now and then, in those liminal hours just before sleep, Harry would feel the shimmer beneath the floorboards. The enchanted lines would flicker against his eyelids as he drifted, like a spell waiting to be cast. But they never stayed. They never settled. And always, in those dreams, the figure would appear in the periphery. A shape at the edge of the stands. Watching. The dog. Harry wasn't sure when he first recognized it. At first it was just movement, a streak of black, low and fast, barely distinguishable from shadow. Then it began to take shape, a large, rangy dog, eyes like coals, watching from beyond the court. It didn't enter. It paced. Back and forth. Sniffing the lines, circling the edges, refusing to cross. Jordan noticed it too. In one dream, faint, muted, shot in long, dreamlike frames, Harry stood at the top of the key, ball under one arm, sweat slicking his palms. Jordan was to his left, knees bent, eyes scanning the court. There was tension, but not panic. Just the rhythm of waiting. Harry bounced the ball once. It echoed flatly. Jordan cut right. Called for the pass, not with words, but with a gesture. A hand raised, a shoulder dipped, an opening. The play was ready. But no one was on the weak side. The lane was empty. They paused. Jordan pivoted, scanning again. Still no movement. The dog sat just beyond the arc watching. Jordan didn't shoot. He didn't drive. He lowered his hands and stepped back. And Harry woke with the word why on his lips. Why wouldn't he move? Sirius Black was still being whispered about in the hallways. Pictures floated through the prophet, his gaunt face, those eyes. And yet, despite the fear, despite the danger, Harry didn't feel threatened. He felt watched. In the real world, he followed the flickering name on the map whenever he could. Not to trap. Not to capture. But to understand. The name never stayed long. It moved like someone seeking a rhythm they'd forgotten how to hear. And as days passed, Harry began to feel something unusual. He felt like Sirius Black was waiting for a cue that hadn't been called. Lupin spoke quietly about trust during one of their lessons. It's one thing to move in rhythm with others, he said, adjusting Harry's stance. It's another to forgive the ones who stepped out of rhythm and trust them to return. Harry didn't answer. But that night, the dream court appeared again. This time, the ball was already bouncing. Harry stood at center. Jordan stood across from him. The court was quiet, the lighting soft and surreal. The dog was watching again, sitting just off the sideline. The play had begun, but it could not complete. Jordan gestured again, an unmistakable motion. A pass to the corner. A space filled only by absence. Harry turned toward the dog. Just a look. The dog stood. But it did not move. The play dissolved. And Harry woke not in fear, but in frustration. Not with Sirius. With the silence. With the pass unreceived. With the rhythm that hovered just inches from returning. He pressed his hand to the map that night and whispered, not to the ink, but to the player off-screen. Step in. There are moments when rhythm isn't learned, but remembered. When motion doesn't begin with decision, but with déjà vu. And this was the season Harry discovered that time, like a game, has structure. That magic and movement could be rerun, not to change what happened, but to understand how it happened. And maybe, to feel it fully, this time. It began with Hermione. Of course it did. She had always moved a little too fast, like someone trying to run the entire playbook by herself. Her schedule had become a strange, overlapping map of appearances, sometimes beside him in charms, and seemingly moments later across the castle in arithmancy. It didn't make sense, not until one late evening when she finally let him see it, the time turner. He stared at the tiny hourglass on the thin golden chain, its sand ticking softly in circles. It didn't hum with power, it whispered with timing. Harry didn't touch it, but the pull of it was immediate, as if it understood him before he could speak. It's dangerous, Hermione said gently. But beautiful, too. Harry wasn't thinking of rules. He was thinking of plays. That night, sleep came not as silence, but as rewind. He stepped into the dream court and it was already in motion, figures sliding backward, movements looping in reverse. A pass caught and unthrown. A cut reversed. Players flowing upstream through time like salmon through memory. Jordan stood at the top of the key, turning slowly. Not confused. Reflective. He wasn't watching the opposition. He was watching himself. Harry stood beside him. Not as student this time, but as mirror. The play reset. A defender's feet shifted, out of position. A teammate missed the screen. The ball came too early. The rhythm was almost right. But not quite. And Jordan turned to see it again. Rewind. Play again. This time, the defender was ready, but the screen was clean. Still wrong. Still off by a breath. Rewind. Harry watched. Watched Jordan replay not the failure, but the movement. Watched him adjust not for victory, but for understanding. Not for change, but for timing. In the real world, Hermione showed him how the time turner worked. Not in practice, only in theory. But Harry felt it before he ever used it. The sense that rhythm could be recalled. That every step ever taken still echoed in the air if you listened the right way. He began to walk Hogwarts differently. He retraced paths already walked, once after breakfast, again just before dinner. The same staircase, the same corridor, the same conversation passing around him like music on loop. He timed his steps. Matched the rhythm. Played back the day not to alter it, but to feel it. And in doing so, he began to hear the beat again. In a quiet moment before curfew, he stood at the edge of the mirror corridor. He stepped left. Then right. Then pivoted slowly. The door shimmered. Not open. Not yet. But willing. He walked away, smiling faintly. That night, in his dream, the court was warm. Not bright, but humming. Like a vinyl record warming beneath the needle. Jordan stood at the sideline, hands on hips, watching a play unfold in perfect silence. The figures on the court were translucent echoes of previous plays, running in rhythm. Ghost screens. Phantom cuts. A pass caught and thrown in the same breath. Harry stepped beside him. Jordan nodded, once. They watched together as the ghosts moved. And when the ball bounced, real this time, solid, Harry stepped forward, caught it on the first bounce, and turned to pass. The ghost reached for it. But Harry didn't let go. He turned. And passed instead to Jordan. Jordan caught it without looking. And smiled. When Harry woke, the time turner was far away, tucked inside Hermione's robes. But the rhythm remained in his hands. The past wasn't something to be erased. It was part of the court. A floorboard. A line. A breath in the sequence. And now, he could move again, not despite it, but because of it. The night was still when it happened. Not quiet, still. A difference that Harry had come to understand deeply. Silence could be heavy, oppressive. But stillness was possibility. A court emptied before the first play. A breath held before the first note. That night, the wind barely stirred, and the enchanted basketball at the foot of Harry's bed glowed faintly, not bright, not urgent, but soft. As if exhaling for the first time in months. He picked it up and held it in both hands. And without knowing when sleep took him, he was there. The court. Full-sized. Real. Alive. But empty. The stands rose around him like carved stone, touched by moonlight. The sigils on the hardwood pulsed with a slow rhythm, like a heart not quite at rest. The lines were unbroken. The air was thick with pause. And at the far end of the court, near the edge of the shadows, sat a figure. Michael Jordan. He was not standing. Not pacing. Just sitting, elbows on knees, head low, hands clasped as if in prayer. No jersey. Just a long-sleeved shirt, worn and loose, and the gleam of shoes that had not run in a very long time. The ball was not at his feet. It was in Harry's hands. He stepped forward. Each movement echoed, not loudly, but clearly. The court wasn't reacting with light, as it had in the early dreams. It was reacting with tone. The subtle shift of space around him. The gentle tension of awareness. Jordan didn't look up. Harry kept walking. When he reached the arc, he stopped. Not waiting for instruction. Not searching for permission. He simply dropped the ball and began to dribble. Slowly. Cleanly. The sound cut through the stillness like a thread pulled through cloth. One bounce. Two. Then a step over slide across the court. Pivot. Turn. A breath. Another bounce. He moved not like a student performing, but like someone remembering. Footwork that had no audience. Steps that didn't seek perfection, only presence. And Jordan raised his head. There was no applause. No commentary. Just the quiet sound of dribbling. And then, Jordan stood. The movement was small. But it changed the air. He didn't rush. He didn't stretch. He simply walked forward, into the rhythm Harry was creating. And then he joined. No words. No signals. Just motion. Harry passed to him, gently, a soft bounce that hit chest height with perfect timing. Jordan caught it and stepped in. One dribble. Then a mirror of Harry's move, turned, refined, held longer in the pocket. They began to dance. Pass. Cat. Slide. Reset. Again. It was not a full play. It was a reintroduction. A heartbeat warming to rhythm. Jordan didn't dominate. He didn't lead. He responded. And when Harry passed again, Jordan didn't return it immediately. He spun, pulled back, set his feet, then passed back with the same timing Harry had used. As if saying, yes. This is how it feels. It was not instruction. It was reply. They moved together like notes building toward a phrase. No plays called. No defense imagined. Just motion and mutuality. The court grew warmer beneath them. The sigils flickered. A soft glow traced their movements. And when at last the ball came back to Harry, Jordan stopped at the arc. He raised his hand, not to shoot, not to command, but to still the moment. Harry stopped too. And in the hush that followed, Jordan nodded. A small, quiet pass. Perfectly timed. Harry caught it. And everything stopped. Not ended. Settled. Jordan turned and walked into the shadows again, not retreating, but resolved. And Harry, standing at midcourt with the ball in his hands, felt the rhythm return. Not as music, not as memory, but as breath. Inhale. Exhale. Motion. When he woke, the enchanted ball lay beside him. Warm. Glowing faintly. And his first thought was not wonder. It was readiness. The court was back. And this time, he could lead. It wasn't a surge. It wasn't a breakthrough. It was a flicker, a return so gentle, so evenly timed, it might have been missed had Harry not been listening. But he was. In the days after the dream court rekindled, everything began to breathe again. The castle still wore its early winter hush, curtains drawn against the wind, stone corridors yawning with ancient chill, but Harry moved through them differently. Not faster. Just more fluid. He no longer checked the Marauder's map for threats. He read it for rhythm. He studied the spacing of students as they moved between classes. He noticed how Professor McGonagall timed her footsteps to match the tempo of her words. Even Peeves, wild and unpredictable, had a kind of syncopated madness to him. Bursting into moments just after a pause, disrupting with precision. And somewhere far away, in Chicago, a team was learning to play without their center. The Bulls were shifting. Not repairing. Adapting. Scottie Pippen stepped forward, not with Jordan's fire, but with something cooler, steadier. Harry didn't see it in headlines, didn't hear it in conversations. He felt it in dreams, small formations forming in the distance, a second triangle taking shape, this time without its apex. It wasn't as sharp. It wasn't as fierce. But it moved. And movement was what mattered now. Harry's magic changed too. The Patronus had always been difficult for him. Not because he couldn't feel the joy it required, but because joy alone was never enough. Joy, when wielded in panic, could fracture, could scatter. But rhythm, that could cut. When the Dementors came again during practice, Harry didn't rush. He didn't shout the spell like a flare against fear. He stepped forward, set his feet, and moved. A wand flicked at the hip, not above, not beyond, but through. A silvery thread shot forward, not bright, not blinding, but precise. It arced like a pass. It curled through the cold. And when it landed, it bloomed into form. Not a roaring stag. Not a conquering hero. Just motion. Clean, curved, real. And it held. Lupin was watching. He didn't clap. Didn't nod. He stepped beside Harry, quietly, and whispered, "That's not power. That's placement." Harry understood. He didn't need to be the brightest. He needed to be in sync. Even his friendship settled into new formations. Ron, always reactive, began to trust his reads more, stepping in where Harry left off, finishing jokes without needing setup. Hermione, still darting between schedules and books, began letting Harry walk her to classes, not as escort, but as anchor. Even Crookshanks started pacing him like a defensive hound, tail swaying in practiced rhythm. The court of motion reappeared in dreams more frequently now. Not always active. Sometimes dimmed, as if sleeping beneath his thoughts. But it was never gone. And when it glowed, Harry no longer looked for Jordan. Sometimes the court was his alone. He practiced cuts, spins, ball fakes and passes with no receiver. The court answered with light, not as reward, but as response. It didn't guide him. It mirrored him. The Marauder's map began pulsing at odd moments in his pocket. When he walked through the castle at night, the enchanted ball hummed softly beneath his robes. Doors opened not with words, but with movement, his pivot here, his lean there, triggering enchantments as though the castle remembered flow. He passed Sirius's name once on the map. It didn't flicker. It moved, slowly, evenly. As if its bearer, too, was beginning to trust the rhythm again. And one night, in the dream court, Jordan appeared, not to play. Just to stand. He leaned against the scorer's table, watching. The lines on the floor gleamed with Harry's footprints. The ball hovered in the air, suspended mid-bounce. Jordan didn't move forward. He nodded, once. Harry bowed slightly, not in reverence, but in rhythm. He turned. Ran the lane. Cut back. Caught the ball. Laid it in. And the court, quietly, beautifully, sighed with life. By late March, the corridors of Hogwarts felt like muscle memory. The wind still slipped through the long windows. The lake still held its dark hush. But Harry walked differently now, not with speed, but with placement. Every footstep felt chosen. Not for show, not even consciously. Just naturally, right. The enchanted basketball no longer hid in his trunk. It stayed near, at his bedside, tucked beneath his arm as he read, occasionally balanced between fingertips as he wandered. It no longer pulsed with magic. It pulsed with familiarity. It was no longer a relic of dreams. It was a tool. A friend. The time-turner's presence, too, began to fold inward, not just as an object, but as a way of seeing. Hermione, ever cautious, reminded him of its dangers. But Harry wasn't interested in changing outcomes anymore. He was interested in seeing the full court. And that's what the time turner began to teach. One evening, as twilight poured honey-colored light into the stone halls, Harry sat beside the window near the mirror corridor and closed his eyes. He imagined the day backwards, not events, but movement. Where he had stood. Where Ron had cut across the courtyard. How Hermione had drifted like a chess piece from class to class. It was all there, just behind his eyelids. He saw not just the people, but the space between them. And suddenly, it all felt like formation. In that moment, he remembered the way Jordan had once stood at midcourt, watching a play not for outcome, but for spacing. For timing. For presence. The dream court had shown. The cut that no one saw coming. The player left in shadow too long. Forgiveness, Harry learned, wasn't softness. It was motion. It was letting go of a frozen frame so that the next one could play. He found Sirius on the map again one night, this time steady. Moving not with panic, but with rhythm. Following a path that made sense. And that night, Harry returned to the time turner with new intention. The moment in the shrieking shack, the rescue, the truth, it all passed like a long sequence. Each move chosen. Each step echoed. And when the turner rewound the scene, Harry saw it unfold not in panic, but in perfect spread. The map in his mind was full court now. He could see everyone. And in that vision, on the highest rafter of memory, Jordan appeared, not central, not commanding, just present. Watching from above the backboard, high and still, like a guardian angel in sneakers. This time, he nodded first. Harry stood beneath him, wand in one hand, the enchanted ball in the other. He didn't speak. He didn't raise a hand. He just turned to the floor, and moved. The past was no longer heavy. It was foundation. Each step now came with weight and lightness. He remembered how the court of motion had first felt, otherworldly, strange. But now, it felt like home. A sacred court of memory and motion. And legacy? Legacy was not a burden handed down. It was rhythm passed quietly, body to body, movement to movement, in silence and in trust. When he woke, he didn't need to write it down. It was in him now. And in the way he walked to breakfast, the way he passed his spoon to Ron, the way he turned just as Hermione opened her mouth to speak, it all moved together. Formation. Not final. Just ready. There are moments, rare and tender, when the world holds its breath, not in fear, but in readiness. The castle was warm again. Not with heat, but with held energy. The kind that lingered just beneath the skin. Spring was still weeks away, but Harry could feel the shift in the stones. In the halls. In the quiet of the courtyard. In the way light touched the glass and broke into careful shapes on the floor. Something was returning. It wasn't noise. It was air. That night, the dream court appeared with no prelude. No bounce. No echo. Just presence. Harry stood alone at the top of the quay, the floor beneath him steady, pulsing in a soft golden grid. Not a play in motion. Just space. Potential. The way a court waits before the tip-off. Everything was silent, but not empty. And then, from the tunnel, he felt it. Not footsteps. Not voice. Wind. It curled inward. Gentle at first. Then fuller. Sweeping through the court not like a gust, but like a breath drawn wide after a long hold. He turned toward it. Michael Jordan was walking in. He was not in uniform. No jersey. No laces flying. Just a clean, dark jacket, shoes scuffed from long miles, and a calm in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. His eyes didn't search. They recognized. Harry didn't speak. Jordan didn't nod. He stopped at the edge of the court and looked around, not with nostalgia, not with grief, but with assessment. As if measuring where he'd been. As if noticing how much of it still remained. He didn't step into the center. He didn't touch the ball. He simply stood. And the wind around him shifted. The banners in the rafters, long dormant, rustled faintly. The lines of the court gleamed, barely, like starlight brushing wood. The air itself grew denser. Not with weight, but with return. Jordan turned slightly, meeting Harry's eyes. Not to say goodbye, but to say, I am not done. He lifted a hand, not in wave, not in farewell. Just a simple rise of fingers. Enough to say, see you soon. And then he walked back toward the tunnel. Not slowly. Not hurriedly. Like someone who knows the next step is coming and is ready for it. When Harry woke, he didn't sit up quickly. He let the dream linger, let the echoes of sneakers on hardwood remain behind his eyes. The enchanted ball rested against his chest. It pulsed once. Lightly. Not magic. Just breath. At breakfast, the world was unchanged. And yet, everything felt timed. He walked through the halls like he belonged not just in them, but to them. Even the ghosts moved in rhythm with him. And in Chicago, somewhere far away, someone laced up shoes. Not for show. For reentry. Jordan had not come back. Not yet. But air had. Harry stepped into the courtyard after class, the sunlight stretched like a lane before him. And for the first time in a very long time, he walked in full sync. The term ended not with a roar, but with a hush. The kind of quiet that comes after the final echo of a song you didn't realize had ended. Exams passed like low waves. Farewells softened into nods. Even the castle seemed to sigh, a long, warm breath exhaled through stone and torchlight. Harry packed slowly. There was no rush, no last-minute panic. Just a quiet folding of robes, the careful wrapping of sweets from Honeydukes, and the basketball, still enchanted, still faintly warm, settled gently into the hollow of his trunk. Not as relic. As companion. He kept it close on the train. The ride home had always been a strange in-between for Harry. Neither here nor there. Neither the world of magic nor the world that ignored it. But this year, the space between felt whole. He sat by the window, knees drawn up, chin resting against the glass, watching the hills slip past in long green waves. Ron snored again. Hermione read again. But Harry's eyes stayed half closed. The ball sat at his feet. And every so often, he reached down and dribbled it once. Just once. No spell. No light. Just the feel of it. Rhythm. When he closed his eyes, he didn't see the dream court this time. He saw echoes. The arc of a perfect pass. The flick of Jordan's hand. The shine of the court of motion beneath full moonlight. But they weren't dreams now. They were memories. Refined. Folded. Woven into his walk, his posture, the small ways he adjusted the weight of his steps. He remembered that final vision, not of Jordan in play, but in pause. Standing with wind curling around him, saying everything with a silence Harry could still feel behind his ribs. The return wasn't noise. It was afterlight. It was the glow that remained after the candles had gone out. In the window's reflection, Harry could just make out his own face. And behind it, barely perceptible, the faint shimmer of a court unseen, lines and sigils written in the outline of the hills, in the shapes of clouds. The world wasn't a court, not literally. But rhythm lived in it. In movement. In placement. In the space between action and stillness. And Jordan? Jordan was moving again. Not publicly. Not loudly. But Harry could feel it. Somewhere in Chicago, the shoes were tied. The training had resumed. The body, still full of fire, was finding breath again. Air had never really left. It had simply gone quiet. As the train pulled toward King's Cross, Harry reached into his bag and felt the ball one more time. His fingers rolled across the leather. The grooves met his hand like an old friend. The rhythm was with him now. It wasn't waiting in dreams. It was here. And he was ready to carry it. Summer settled gently across the landscape, like a soft blanket drawn up beneath the chin of the world. The tree swayed not with urgency, but with memory. The wind carried no storm, only warmth. And Harry, walking down the quiet lane toward the Dursleys' home, did not rush. He didn't dread the stillness this year. Because now, he understood that stillness was not absence. It was potential. It was rest. And somewhere far away, beneath stone, beyond torchlight, behind a door that did not always appear, the court of motion remained. It did not pulse. It did not shine. But it breathed. Each floorboard slumbered in rhythm. The sigils on the court's edge dimmed to the color of old parchment. The basket rims were silent, perfectly still. The enchanted lines curved like rivers remembered by maps, waiting for footfalls, for bounce, for return. No one walked it now. No spell echoed in its corners. No plays were whispered through its arches. But the court was not empty. It was resting. And the enchanted ball, tucked into Harry's dresser drawer in the quietest corner of Privet Drive, glowed every few nights, not with brightness, but with warmth. It didn't call to him. It didn't dream for him. It simply stayed. Because rhythm doesn't end. It loops. It quiets. And it waits. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, Harry would wake and press his hand to the drawer. Not to open it. Just to feel the weight of what remained. In his sleep, no grand dreams arrived. No Jordan in full flight. No courts of gold. But occasionally, he would feel a simple echo. The soft squeak of sneakers on hardwood. A ball dribbled twice. A pass, caught clean. Nothing more. Just enough. And in the shadows beneath Hogwarts, beneath learning and time and legacy, the court of motion waited. Not as a secret. Not even as a mystery. But as a promise. That rhythm, once found, never truly leaves. And one day, perhaps years from now, a new player will stumble into a sharp pivot near the mirror corridor. A strange beat will pulse beneath the stones. A door will shimmer into view. And the court will welcome them. No instructions. No crowd. Just lines. Just space. Just rhythm. Waiting to be moved. This year at Hogwarts was unlike any other, not because of what was taught, but because of what was remembered. Harry returned under storm clouds, Sirius Black escaped, the court of motion gone dim, and Michael Jordan silent in his dreams. The enchanted ball had grown cold. And with it, Harry's rhythm faltered. Dementors arrived, casting not just fear but positional suppression, an erasure of flow. Quidditch became fogged. Even Dream Jordan faltered. The ball slipped from his grasp. It was the first time Harry felt him lose rhythm, and it shook him. But the Marauder's map changed everything. Harry stopped seeking control and began observing presence. Watching the castle move, like a living play. Watching patterns, tracking cuts, feeling formation. And the court began to whisper again. Sirius Black's shadow loomed, an off-form presence, haunting the edges of Harry's vision and the court. He was the teammate who wouldn't cut. The ghost who wouldn't guard. Then time bent, literally. Hermione's time turner gave Harry new eyes. He stopped fearing mistakes. He started re-seeing them. like Jordan reviewing a broken play not to correct, but to feel. And then, the dream court reawakened. Harry led rhythm. He dribbled first. Jordan joined. Not as mentor. As partner. And from that breath, everything flowed. The Bulls adapted. Pippin led. Harry sharpened his Patronus, not a blast, but a cut. Sirius returned. Not to haunt, but to heal. And Jordan? Jordan reappeared. Just once. Calm. Present. Not playing. Recharging. The season ended not with fireworks, but with rhythm resting. Year 1 began with spark, the court of motion discovered accidentally, like a beat stumbled upon in darkness. Harry's body learned magic before his mind did. Jordan appeared as a whisper, no words, just bounce and breath. That first year, motion was instinct. Year 2 was confusion, the rhythm corrupted by the chamber of secrets, defense and danger entwined. The court flickered, and Jordan's appearances became less frequent. Harry had to learn improvisation, how to move when the floor changes beneath you. He didn't lead the rhythm that year, but he preserved it. And this year, year 3, was rhythm lost and reborn. It was about finding feel in absence. Watching others. Trusting formation. Leading a play not with power, but with timing. The court of motion is no longer a secret. It's a layer of Hogwarts itself. Harry now walks with rhythm, his step, his spells, even his friendships shaped by flow. Jordan is no longer a dream guide. He is a rhythm echo. A blueprint. And Harry? He's becoming a player coach. In Chicago, Jordan will return. Not suddenly. Not for spectacle. But slowly, like a ripple growing wider. The Bulls will begin next season not knowing he's coming, but feeling something in the air. Phil Jackson will refine the triangle. The players will stretch their movements, Pippin wider, Q-Cock sharper, Longley smarter. The system will hum. And then, air. He will return not to lead the league. He will return to feel the game again. And at Hogwarts, Year 4 waits. A tournament. A turning. New players will enter Harry's court, some brilliant, some dangerous. The rhythm will stretch wider than ever before. Harry will be asked to compete. Not just in magic. In flow. And the court of motion? It will test him. It will ask, can you hold rhythm when the play becomes life? If you've been drifting with me through this journey, thank you. Drop a crescent moon in the comments if you made it all the way to the end of the Return of Air. I'd love to know your favorite moment, maybe that first slow dribble on the dream court, or when Harry passed to Jordan instead of the ghost. And if you're ready for more sleepy adventures, you'll find other magical, long-form episodes waiting right here on the channel, just as rich, just as dreamlike. Glowing forests, ocean libraries, even more Hogwarts times NBA crossovers. Explore them when you're ready. Tonight's trivia whisper, which player did Oliver would say was the best seeker Hogwarts had seen in over a century, until Harry came along? Leave your answer in the comments, no rushing. Let your memory wander. Maybe the map will remember. If this brought you calm, if you found rhythm again in these hours, I'd be honored if you liked the video, subscribed, and shared it with someone who needs to dream a little deeper. I'll see you next time. Until then, breathe slow, walk in rhythm, and let the court remain. Good night.